Welcome to Leaders' Questions.
Housing delivery is the #1 priority for this government. That's the opening line of the statement issued by yourself and the Taoiseach following the first meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Housing. From this meeting, you had promised a slate of new and dynamic ideas, you said, to tackle the housing crisis, but that has not materialised. In fact, you've brought nothing new at all. The truth is, Taoiseach, that your housing plan is in free fall. After your figure of 40,000 new homes for 2024 was discovered to be a work of fiction. So now you have this scattered, frantic, directionless approach where the government is talking about everything but dealing with nothing. Just to remind you, we still have sky-high house prices. The CSO tell us 200,000 euros more expensive now than a decade ago. We still have rip-off rents, shocking levels of homelessness, and today a report reveals the extent to which international students are being pressurised for sex in return for rent-free housing, surely a new low. You propose to end the rent pressure zones. You propose to reintroduce tax breaks for developers, but you give nothing on how government is going to deliver homes that working people can actually afford to buy or rent. After all the high-level meetings, your big centrepiece idea, it seems, is to relax planning rules to allow people to build cabins in the bottom of their gardens. Now, greater flexibility is needed in this, and we will work with the Minister to get the regulations in place. But to cast this up as the solution to the housing crisis simply highlights just how broken and how failed your response to the housing crisis is. Tinkering around at the edges doesn't cut it, Taoiseach. We need a serious change of direction in housing policy, one in which the housing needs of ordinary people is prioritised and where affordability is tackled head-on. In O'Devney Gardens, now called Montpellier, here in Dublin, the largest government so-called affordable housing scheme in the state, we read this morning that a 2-bedroom apartment in the development can cost anything up to 402,000 euros. That's not affordable, Taoiseach. It's certainly not the cost we should be getting from a government-subsidised housing scheme. This was, remember, public land on which the state could have developed genuinely affordable homes. But instead, government forced Dublin City Council to hand it over to a private developer, and now we have these prices that are out of reach for the vast majority of working people. Taoiseach, you have stated that everything is on the table when it comes to housing. But in reality, this is code for not having a clue what to do next. Your so-called new government has no new ideas and no coherent plan. Tá de phlean tuithíochta ina phraseach, mar sin tá de chur chuige trina chéile, níl túram nó freagra nó ar bith an rialtas seo tá an anam is a bheith nua Maria. Taoiseach, this government is all over the place on housing. The big question now is, when will you get your act together? When will you bring forward new ideas and solutions to this crisis?
Well, at this point, everyone we're all Sléir ó fithe amach go bhfuil dul chun cín le feiscint ó thaobh cuasaí tuithíochta. Tá na cuid déanta going agus léir mar aon lei sin nach bhfuil go leor déanta ar a dóthain de déanta going agus tá bhfad níos mó le déanamh sna míana agus sna blianta atá roing. Ach an tóir antá gom héin ná go bhfuil an policy atá ag an rialtas seo a bhfad níos fearr agus beic sé a bhfad níos ifiachtach den na polisithe atá fáiltethe ag Sinn Féin. Agus níl aon áras orm faoi sin. Just want to say at the outset that since 2020 onwards, there has been progress in relation to housing. And we went from 20,000 a year to over 30,000 a year. We exceeded the targets that were set in Housing for All, which were realistic targets taking variable factors into account. But given the rise in Irish population and the growth of our country, it's not enough, and I acknowledge that. And housing is the #1 issue facing us. And we have introduced a range of schemes. The last government did. This government, only a number of weeks in office, has announced affordable 450 million additional funding for social, affordable and cost rental homes. We're setting up a new strategic initiative office, housing initiative office, as recommended by the Housing Commission. We're publishing the National Planning Framework to allow us to zone much more land and to enable the county councils and the city councils to zone additional land for more houses to be built. So we are hitting the ground running in relation to the housing agenda. And if I contrast with your position, and I acknowledge all the challenges and the pricing and so on like that, but the bottom line is that our schemes have helped an enormous amount of first-time buyers. The Help to Buy scheme has been about 51,000 approvals. So that's 51,000 approvals. You opposed it, and you proposed to abolish it. The First Home scheme, likewise. Over 3,000 homes have been bought by young couples or young individuals using the First Home scheme. You proposed to abolish that. And that's, I believe, why the people were not persuaded by your housing policy platform. And then you had a convoluted idea under affordable housing that people could buy the house, but they couldn't buy the land on which the house was built. And you would dictate how they would sell the house subsequently, which appealed to nobody out there in respect of young people looking to buy a house for the future. And those are the facts, and people made decisions based on that. But that doesn't get away from the need to get to 50,000 houses per annum, as the ESRI are indicating is required given our population growth. And the focus has to be on initiatives that make that happen. You mentioned O'Devany Gardens. I accept those prices are high, but they're being heavily subsidised as it is by the state. Heavily subsidised. So you can't have it both ways, Deputy. The entire intervention in housing at the moment, this is repeated now happening at Count Corla, repeated heckling and interventions by Sinn Féin every time I speak on leaders' questions.
30 seconds
and
left.
that sort of intimidatory tactics and attempts to disrupt must be stopped. Well, I'm just
left.
making a point,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to take it and without making the point.
Please.
Because Deputy O'Brien seems to either aspiring to be the leader of Sinn Féin or what, I don't know, but he's constantly interrupting on these matters. But could I say that we do, in terms of other initiatives that we will be taking,
Thank you, Taoiseach.
and we outlined those yesterday in the
McDonald.
aftermath of the Cabinet Subcommittee
Taoiseach.
on
Time is
Housing,
up
which
now.
is
See,
held on
Taoiseach,
Monday.
I can only surmise that you wish to deflect and comment on Sinn Féin's policies because you know you've been caught out. Like you've been found out, right? You spoofed during the election campaign. You presented a work of fiction, kind of fact flexibility from Fianna Fáil. What a novel thing, not. And now you're in the hot seat again and there's an expectation of delivery. And you are showing no serious intent, much less any capacity, to actually deliver the affordable homes that working people require at scale. No interest really in taming runaway rents, far from it. You're quite happy to listen to your lobbyist friends, all of your old party political mates who now find themselves in other places of influence. You've missed social and affordable housing targets every single year on your watch. And the typical home, as I told you, is 200 grand more expensive than over a decade ago. You claim progress, but the residential property price index demonstrates that prices are up by 8.7% in the last 12 months. So you're failing, Taoiseach. Why don't you just stand up and accept that fact?
Taoiseach, please.
First of all, the difference in our policy platforms on housing are clear. And I think you would do away with supports for first-time buyers. We're going to double down and continue our supports for first-time buyers in particular. And we have, in the first weeks of this government, substantially now increased allocations for social, affordable and cost rental and additional 450 million. And now the big issue
Deputy O'Brien,
facing the country
please.
is outturn. We're at the beginning of this year. We're not misleading anybody, Deputy. Is this going to be a constant?
Deputy, please stop interrupting.
Deputy O'Brien, I have heard your leader
Deputy,
speak to
it's
the
your
chair.
leader asking the question. Allow the Taoiseach to speak. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a
Taoiseach.
constant behavioural tactic of Sinn Féin to prevent the government side of the House to at least present its position.
When the time is up, the time
The main
is up.
point I was going to make is this. There are a number of options facing us. We do have to get the private sector involved, much more, and as we know from all the lobbyists that you met, Deputy O'Brien. But also,
Your time
I
is
take
up,
the point
Taoiseach.
that was made earlier in respect of
Thank
public
you, Taoiseach.
expenditure.
Your time is
we
up.
do need to continue
We move now to
increase
Deputy
public
Ivana
expenditure on
Bacik,
housing.
Labour Party.
And
Thank you,
we have to try and do both.
Thank
Whether
you,
it's a tax
Taoiseach.
expenditure.
Time is up, Taoiseach.
This is
Thank
not
you.
satisfactory,
Deputy
Count
Ivana
Paula.
Bacik of the
It's not
Labour Party.
satisfactory.
Thank you, Deputy.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.